Hello and welcome to our second ever book club for April. In honor of Earth Day, we chose the book All We Can Save: Truth, Courage, and Solutions for the Climate Crisis. And today, here to talk about the book, we have Katharine K. Wilkinson. Thank you so much for joining us. All We Can Save is an incredible book and a reminder that there is a way to save the planet, which is through collective action. The book is essentially a manifesto and guide to creating climate solutions told from the feminine perspective. Feminine meaning practices rooted in compassion, collaboration, connection, and creativity. Kind of the two main takeaways that I took from the book were, first, one, to care about climate change, all we really have to be is a human being living on planet Earth. And two, in order to change everything, which is what needs to happen for climate change, is that we need everyone. I kind of wanted to talk to you about what you thought the main message was, or what you want readers to be instilled with after reading the book.
Well, first of all, I love your description of what this book is about. And I love those two things as takeaways. Maybe the place to start actually is with the poetry that inspired the title of the book, because that's where the book begins. And I think in so many ways, it is the core message of the book. So there's a stanza of poetry by Adrienne Rich that says, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world." And our hearts are also moved by all we cannot save, right? And by all that we together still can. And we know it's that together piece, right? The we, that is really, really critical.
Yeah, I love that you included poetry and art so much into this climate space that feels so technical and scientific and generally so raw. I thought it's such a powerful combination, and you can tell that feminine energy and like how much creativity and spirit needs to be involved in creating solutions. Kind of talk about why you chose to integrate so much poetry within the book.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's interesting, right? That like here we are in this moment that in so many ways poses to us like the biggest ever questions about what it means to be human and what our responsibilities are to one another and to this planet that we all share. It's kind of bananas that we think that we can go to science or policy, or sort of technology and engineering for all of those answers, right? That like we could solve it all in our prefrontal cortex. And I think the thing that's so powerful about art and poetry is that it gives us a different access point, right? It invites us to like feel the feelings that if we're human, right, we have about what's happening. And they also give us a sense that we're not alone in those feelings, right? We know, like we have more and more kind of research and polling that tells us about like the growing sort of mental health issues related to climate change. But we also know that like people don't talk about it. There's this incredible silence. And so being able to come into the topic, not just through, essays or more kind of, linear kinds of writing, but through art and poetry is like, oh yes, all of you is actually welcome into this conversation. And in fact, all of us is needed. And it's that integration, I think, of our heads and our hearts and our hands. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the poems, which was Being Human by Naima Fetterman, it was such a beautiful perspective on nature that like makes it human in a way, which was so powerful. And it's like everything, humans are just one part of this huge world of so many other things, and we are all the same. So why are we putting ourselves on this pedestal when all these other creatures and even the wind was humanized? And it's so interesting, it's so powerful when you read poetry. It makes it feel, you just feel so much more connected. You're like, wow, we're just all one thing. Like, how can we not help? And then you can read those same words in a scientific journal or a scholarly article, and you just don't have that same connection emotionally. And it's so powerful what you put in the book. Like you can't read it and not feel anything.
I love that. And that's part of why too, like the subtitle of the book is Truth, Courage, and Solutions, right? That we need, right? We need science to understand where are we and what is it going to take to get us out of this mess. We also need good, like, justice anchored analysis to understand what's happening. We have to have courage, right? Like, we have to be tapping into some deeper wellspring of energy in this work. And then of course we have to have solutions. And it's really in bringing together that trifecta that we actually kind of open a way forward.
Yeah, talking about courage, I know that's the main problem, especially maybe someone that doesn't know a lot about the climate crisis and maybe feels like overwhelmed, like where do I even begin?
Yeah.
What do you think like some daily actions are for people listening, for myself, that that you can really commit to a sustainable lifestyle and make these small changes? You can really be connected to eco-activism in an everyday, real way.
Yeah.
Because it does take courage to just make that first step, even if it's something small as bringing a reusable bag. You just have to keep remembering.
Yeah, it totally. And I think you're absolutely right that like the issue can feel really big, really overwhelming, complex. Like maybe I've got to have a PhD and, like whatever to even begin to enter into this conversation. And I think it's one of the things that has been so powerful about how people have received this book is that you've got 60 different perspectives, right? Just in these pages. And so almost everyone has been able to find some entry point that feels kind of kindred to the work that they do, or something that they're passionate about, or something that they hold really dear, right? That it's not just scientists and policymakers and activists, but it's also journalists and psychologists and storytellers and I think when we start to just see the breadth of the entry points to the topic, I think that's super helpful. I think knowing that it is a bit of a learning journey, right? And kind of like being like, cool, okay, this book is a great place to start. There are some great climate podcasts that are a great place to start, right? Where it's like, you can come in from a more like storytelling narrative angle that I think is easier. And then the framework that I like to use for thinking about like, what can I do, right? Which is a question that thank goodness so many people are asking, right? But it is really huge. So I actually wrote a piece last year for Time magazine about this because it's a question we get a lot, and there just aren't simple answers to something this complicated, right? Especially when what we want is for people to bring their superpowers into this work or activism or contribution in some way. So there's 5 steps that I think about. And the first one is actually to feel your feelings, right? There's incredibly important information in what's coming up in our bodies, in our emotional systems about this moment. So don't shove that down. Like that's actually a really important place to start. So feel your feelings, and then scout your superpowers, right? What is it that gives you a sense of authentic power and joy that you can contribute, right? And then survey solutions, right? The thing is, there are so many tools in our toolbox, so many things we can do. And if you're kind of like, where do I begin with a survey solutions effort? The nonprofit that I used to work for, Project Drawdown, has this incredible, like basically curation of the world's climate solutions. So it's a great place to start and just kind of be like, what's here that I feel some energy around, right? That's a great place to start. Then consider your context, right? Maybe you're in fashion, right? Maybe you are in law. Maybe you're in PR and communication. Maybe you're a teacher, right? Like whatever of those professional spheres you're in, there are absolutely opportunities for connecting the dots with climate. Same thing with where you live, right? Your community, your city. And then the last one is to cultivate a climate squad. Like absolutely do not try to go it alone, right? Because it is overwhelming and we need each other, right? the biggest thing is to figure out ways that we can link arms and do things in kind of collective action, right? Whether that's engaging in our political system, supporting campaigns, getting out to a march, but especially also in our day-to-day work, right? Do we have colleagues or collaborators or partners in good trouble that we can begin to take climate action with? So it's not a simple answer, but it is kind of one of those rinse and repeat cycles. And what I've found, I've been in climate work now for over 2 decades, starting as a youth activist, and here I am about 2 decades later. And I just keep finding even better ways to answer that question, right? And to bring more and more of the best of myself to this work.
Is there any like voices or organizations other than the nonprofit you mentioned that you want to maybe amplify here and kind of talk about, use this platform? Maybe, you know, there's fashion listeners here that don't know about these organizations that you would maybe want to connect them with?
Absolutely. So I will have to do a shameless plug first for the All We Can Save project, which is the nonprofit that kind of grew out of this book. And we have a whole bunch of resources on our website, which is allwecansave.earth, for All We Can Save reading circle materials, which is a great place to start with the learning and the climate squad piece. We have resources for working with climate emotions, and we have a whole bunch of resources for educators who want to use this book in the classroom, and more coming.
I really, really, really think that they need to be teaching this book in classrooms, because I took so many environmental science classes in high school and college, and we never read a book that had so much emotional attachment to climate change. And I think and also a female voice. I don't think we read many pieces that were written by female authors. They need to be pushing this in classrooms. I think it would just really, really be such a powerful impact.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually got to teach this book in the fall of 2020, right when it came out. And it was amazing to see the connection that people were making to this topic, which, they'd been concerned about, right? But they hadn't necessarily been able to connect with in such a personal way. So I agree. I think it's a really, really powerful one for the classroom. Yeah. I mentioned podcasts. Maybe I'll shout out a couple
Your
of
podcast.
those. Yeah, so I have one. We'll do that one last. But I love the podcast Mothers of Invention, which is co-hosted by Molly Kodakara, Maeve Higgins, and Mary Robinson, who's like one of these, incredible elders in climate leadership. It's great. They focus all on, their tagline is climate change is a man-made problem with a feminist solution. So lots of amazing women get interviewed. How to Save a Planet is another really great one that my co-editor on this book, Ayana Elizabeth Johnson, was the co-creator of. And then the podcast that I co-host with Dr. Leah Stokes is called A Matter of Degrees. And it's all like very accessible kind of narrative storytelling. So don't be scared. It's a great way to just while you're walking your dog or cooking dinner or whatever, to begin to get grounded.
I think when people think of climate solution podcasts, they think it's so scientific that they're like, I don't want to listen to a 30-minute explanation that's going to leave me heartbroken about the state of the planet, because it's true, eco-anxiety is so real, and you talk about it in the book, and even if you don't feel it directly, soon we're feeling it, and we're whole world's connected. So you do really have to have these narrative stories to really connect it back to your soul, so it feels really it's impacting you personally.
I think that's exactly right. I think it's exactly right. Yeah. And for folks who are maybe looking for a more kind of activist way in, want to get involved in that way, the Sunrise Movement is an amazing organization that's youth-led and doing really great work. 350.org is another one, but there are almost certainly kind of more grassroots groups in any city that you might live in. So I would say also see what's happening there at a local level, and where, that's also a great way to get kind of plugged into some local climate community as well.
I know for me, it's there's so many different organizations doing so many different things in the climate solution space. It's where where do I go? Is it for water, or is it for trees, or is it for soil, or is it, helping indigenous communities? I don't know where to start, because there's just so many amazing groups of activists, projects, places you can donate. I know that's like kind of a weird question to ask, but like, what should I, like, where do you think I should spend my energy, my time, my focus, like, first starting in?
Yeah. I mean, I think the way that you've asked the question is so spot on, that like there are so many good things happening. So, go ahead and set aside that there's any one perfect thing to be involved in, but there are so many worthy things to be involved in. And that's why, like, I think it's really helpful to like do a little bit of scouting and see like, where is there something that you're feeling some tug, right? You're feeling a little like fire in the belly about, oh yeah, I'm really passionate about supporting these water protectors, right, who are fighting against pipelines. Or I'm feeling really excited about, better bike infrastructure in my city because I'm passionate about that. I'm going to go there. I really care about foods, so I want to get involved in, something around regenerative agriculture. Like, let the things you love help you filter into, which piece of the puzzle you want to work on. I think the thing that I try to trust in is that there is this great and growing ecosystem of transformation that is rising to meet this moment, right? So many people doing so much good work. So just like find the node in the ecosystem that feels like the right node for you, right? Like if you were sort of a species in an ecosystem, like would you, maybe you'd be a tree, and then you'd be sort of contributing that piece of
I
this
like that.
interconnected
Okay,
puzzle.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it's so it's so needed to have this feminine perspective to a world that's so it's so not compassionate and collaborative and looking at the big picture, the big community. So it's so nice to have these feminine voices and have this feminine feeling towards, Mother Earth, which is so maternal and nurturing. And like speaking to you, and I'm going to get more interested in like these different female podcasts and start reaching. It's just such a needed perspective. And I really hope that we, can hire more female leaders in this space and really like push this narrative, because it's so important and it's so vital. And honestly, I feel like this is the first time I've ever really read a whole collection of only female like authors. It's crazy.
It is kind of crazy. I remember someone being like, I'm a man and I feel left out of this book. And I was like, it's one book. It's one book that's all women. Like there are so many books that are all men, like it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, I know. It's just really crazy because it's such a needed voice, especially, I mean, in all spaces, but just especially in this space, because it feels like, we all need to do this together. So we need to have this community where everyone's on the same page, doing their small things to create this collective change.
Totally. I've learned a lot about this piece from Sherry Mitchell, who has an amazing essay in the first section of the book. She's an Indigenous attorney and author and teacher. And she talks about kind of in her, kind of in what she's learned from her community, her elders, that the feminine, and this is regardless of gender, right? The feminine is about heart-centered wisdom, and the masculine is about action in the world. And we need both of those coming together, right? And if you sort of think about, well, like, how are we in the mess that we're in? It's a whole bunch of action in the world in the absence of heart-centered wisdom. And so I think for all of us, whether we identify as women or as men or non-binary, like cultivating this, this balance of the masculine and feminine, and making sure that we are making space for and bringing that heart-centered wisdom into everything that we do. That feels really fundamental to me for the kind of transformation that we need to have.
Yeah, I love that. I'm looking at my notes now, and I remember there's a quote that says, "Women moving beyond ego, competition, and control, which are rampant in the climate space and impede good work." And it's so true. Like that, the sense of control and competition, which is just so part of society right now. It needs to be dismantled for us to really have this sense of, worldwide citizenship and worldwide connection and like commitment to creating this community. I know, but this is a very nice, hopeful message that we can do this. It's not too late, because you see so many books that are like, it's too late, it's over, or like you have such a sense of hopelessness. So this was such a beacon of hope. So it was such an amazing read. Keep thinking about it months later, like it's still, popping up in my head, asking me questions, and that's something that's so important.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
I'm like, oh, this reminded me of this, and how's the language of climate change like in this article compared to like this book. So it's very very impactful in my life.
I love that. And I think that is a really nice thing about an anthology, is you can jump around, right? Like we designed it to have an arc, but if there's a section that's calling you, or a particular essay or perspective, like go there and then see what's happening over here, right? And you can kind of do it in a more, bite-sized and accessible way.
Yeah. I also, just because I know that the book is divided into 6 chapters, the artwork on each of the chapter, is there some sort of significance? Because I was wondering about the division of like the 4.
Yeah. So I'll hold up an example. This is from the artwork from the opening essay. All of these pieces are by Madeline Jubilee Saito, who does these incredible they're like poem comics. And she had actually done this beautiful series. She'd done like 30 days of climate comics. And I happened to see a tweet about them from the Sunrise Movement. And it was right when we were starting to curate the book. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are like so the vibe, so the spirit. And we reached out to her and she was game to have them included. And so when we finally had all of the essays, all of the poems, and all of the art, Ayana and I got on this huge conference table, and we had everything printed out, and we just moved the puzzle pieces around to think about like which things needed to be in conversation with each other, and which of Madeline's pieces like were really, kind of got at the heart of a theme of one of the sections of the book. So it was a really fun kind of puzzling at the very end, like putting
it definitely seems like she made it after she read the compilation, because it fits so well. That's crazy.
I know, it's really amazing. And Madeline works now with All We Can Save Project. So she's our creative director. She's amazing.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. So you actually like physically compiled it like on it. That's really fun.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
It must have been so hard to like, what do I not include? What do I include? I mean, there's just so much amazing resources out there. So
yeah, totally. And we were really excited. Like most of the essays in this book are new writing. So it's a lot of folks who, had not written about their work or what they've learned over their, years in climate leadership. So there's a lot of really, a lot of these are folks who, they're not writers primarily, they're doers, right? They're organizers, they're advocates, they're, policy shapers, whatever the case might be. And so it's pretty special to get their perspectives into the written word and accessible to so many people.
Yeah, I like that. They're not writers, they're doers.
Yeah. Not that writing isn't doing, having done a lot of writing.
No, of course, obviously.
But it's like,
doers, they're action oriented. Writing
totally like their sleeves are rolled up, they're out in the world. Yeah, completely.
And I think that's so important for everything, for activism. It's just such a, what can I do? I'm getting, putting my hands in there and I'm doing it.
Yeah, totally. Should we read one of the poems?
Yeah, read. I would love that.
That could be kind of fun.
Let's do it. Show me the page.
Let's see. I love this one. I mean, I love them all, but I love, this is Dead Stars by Ada Limon. And I found myself coming back to it a lot in the last year. Should I read it?
Yeah.
Okay. She writes, out here, there's a bowing even the trees are doing. Winter's icy hand at the back of all of us. Black bark, slick yellow leaves, a kind of stillness that feels so mute it's almost in another year. I am a hearth of spiders these days, a nest of trying. We point out the stars that make Orion as we take out the trash, the rolling containers, a song of suburban thunder. It's almost romantic as we adjust the waxy blue recycling bin until you say, man, we should really learn some new constellations. And it's true. We keep forgetting about Antlia, Centaurus, Draco, Lacerda, Hydra, Lyra, Lynx, but mostly we're forgetting we're dead stars too. My mouth is full of dust and I wish to reclaim the rising, to lean in the spotlight of streetlight with you toward what's larger within us, toward how we were born. Look, we are not unspectacular things. We've come this far, survived this much. What would happen if we decided to survive more, to love harder? What if we stood up with our synapses and flesh and said no, no to the rising tides, stood for the many mute mouths of the sea, of the land? What would happen if we used our bodies to bargain for the safety of others, for Earth? If we declared a clean night, if we stopped being terrified, if we launched our demands into the sky, made ourselves so big, people could point to us with the arrows they make in their minds, rolling their trash bins out after all of this is over. And I love this challenge that she puts to us of like, what if, right? What if we just really tried, right? We mustered all of ourselves to give this a go. My cat very much likes to be on Zoom, so we'll just give him a moment. He's like loitering around and trying every angle to get on here.
It just shows like the infinity of the world. Like the stars are so far away, but we're all connected. It's such a beautiful way. Like it's just such a beautiful takeaway that, you know, we just have to try for everything, for everyone, for this, just everything.
Totally. And that's like what I come back to when I feel like this work is just so big and I am so small, is that for 3.8 billion years on this planet, life has been just moving forward into more life, right? Life force is the most incredible dynamic on this planet. And I think when we let ourselves feel that, like as a wind at our back, right, that we are participating in something so much bigger than we are and so powerful, you know, that makes me feel like, well, I don't know how this is going to go, right? Or whether we will, quote unquote, be successful or not in this work. But I do know that doing it is absolutely in alignment with who we are meant to be as human beings and just as members of the community of life. And that, you know, I can't imagine anything more important than trying to honor that.
Wow, that was so beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much. It's so true. We're all just a member of this community of life, and we have to do our part for everyone else. Yeah. And I think that's the perfect way to end our 30-minute conversation on that note. So thank you so much for instilling some hope in all of us. And thank you so much for joining us. It was an amazing book.
Thank you so much for helping this book reach more people. I hope a lot of folks get sort of, lit up and begin to figure out a little more deeply, like where they might fit into all of this.
Exactly.
There's so much good work to do.
There's so much, even if someone's in fashion sustainability is such a huge topic that people need to explore more and get more invested. So even if it's that, or whoever listeners are, they can always approach it from a different angle.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much.